Hey everybody, welcome back to Mixing Music Analog and mixingmusicanalog.com and here on my YouTube channel, and we are back again for another subscriber Q&A. This is episode number 3, I believe, where I answer all your questions, things that have come in over the YouTube comments, things that have come in through email. Try to stay on top of this for you guys and answer all these questions for you. So if you want a question about my gear, the workflow, hybrid mixing, or anything about studio related stuff, and you want me to answer one of your questions in an upcoming video, leave it in the comment section below, or you can email me through the website. Just go to mixingmusicanalog.com and check that out. So that's what we're gonna do today. So before we get started, like, share, subscribe, also hit the notification bell, right? And then also, if this video helps you in any way, or if this channel helps you in any way, consider supporting me by hitting the thanks button underneath this video. It really does help, and I really do appreciate it. Also, all the gear that I have in the studio, links are in the description box below. Those go out to Sweetwater. Those are my affiliate links, right? You know all about that if you've been watching YouTube. Every engineer has affiliate links with Sweetwater. Use those links. It helps out Uncle Dave. I get a small commission, and I really do appreciate it. You can copy any one of those links to your desktop, and you can use it 365 days a year. So help out Uncle Dave, because I'm here trying to help you, and I appreciate it, and thank you in advance. So, got 3 questions here we're gonna answer today. The first one comes in from MeJ331. Cool name, MeJ331. And MeJ asks, hey Dave, what is the one thing you like the least about working analog? What is the one thing I don't like the least, that I like the least about it? Well, that's a good question. You know, ever since I've started working in this workflow, this format, probably getting close to 2 solid years now, there's not a lot about it that I don't like. I really do enjoy it. It is super cool and super fun. If I had to pick one thing the least thing, we're talking just about workflow, because I guess you could say the cost of it all, the investment is the thing I like the least. But beyond that, the workflow, I would say that if I had to say anything, I would say, you know, I guess I wish that at least my particular setup maybe had some of the features that we talk about that this console doesn't have. Things like, I think the biggest one would probably be the automation side. I wish it had flying faders and automation so I didn't have to do so many workarounds. The recall thing I don't really care about as much, although that would be nice. So if I had to say the thing I like the least, is there are some compromises when it comes to automation, when it comes to recall. Although again, recall is not that big of a deal for me. As I said, I've done some videos on this already on the channel. Go watch the video. I think it's entitled, Stop Doing Recalls, Become a Better Engineer, or something like that. Maybe an image will come up on the screen here. Go check out that video. I'll put the link in the description box if I remember. That will kind of answer that. But I guess I would say maybe the automation piece. I wish this particular console had automation. There are consoles out there that do, but they're very expensive. Like I said, when I first shopped for this console, at this price point, that's not possible. You're talking 80, 100,000 plus, you know, north of that to get a desk that has those features. So I guess the thing I like the least about it is with things like automation, I have to do some workarounds. It's not a big deal. It works for me, but I have to do some workarounds, and I wish that I had a console that had that. And who knows, maybe one day I will, but I can't see trading this in and spending an additional, you know, $60,000 to $100,000 to get that one feature. So I guess that would be the thing I like the least. Outside of that, MeJ, there's nothing about it that I don't like. I mean, it is way fun. It is so much more inspiring to me personally than just mixing with plugins in the box, because I did that for years. I have a whole online school that teaches that. It's wonderful. But to me, this is so much more inspiring, enjoyable, and it's fun. So I can't say that there's a lot about it I don't like, because there just isn't for me personally. But I would say maybe some of the workarounds, and one of them probably being automation. So I hope that answers your question. I wish I could give you a laundry list of things I don't like, but there really isn't. So anyhow, second question comes in from Stephen P. Now this question I get asked about quite a bit since the Origin has come out with a 16-channel version. But the question is from Stephen, Do you think the Origin 16 is worth it, or should I hold out for the 32? Would you have purchased the 16 if it was out when you bought your console? Well, thanks Stephen for writing in. We talked about this on the live stream, myself and David S.J., when the SSL put out the Origin 16. So by the time you're watching this video, I'm sure you know, if you know anything about SSL, they took this 32 channel, they knocked off the last 16 channels, and basically from the master section, the center section down is the Origin 16. 16 long faders, 16 short faders, 8 stereo groups in the center. That console, as I sit here and record this video, runs about $40,000 US, whereas the 32 channel runs around 60,000 or slightly above 60,000 US. So the question is, that $20,000 difference, is it worth it holding out for the 32? And would I have purchased the 16 if it was out when the 32 came out, if they put out both versions together? I've thought about this question a lot, Stephen, and I don't think personally I would have bought a 16 channel mixer for 40 grand. All the mixes, 99% of them that I do, I use all 32 faders. And some of them I use 48 faders or 40 faders with the short faders. The difference between the long fader and the short fader, for folks that don't know, it's exactly the same, other than you can only use the EQ on board on one or the other, not both at the same time. And so you could take your 16 channels, and if you had 16 long, 16 short, you in essence have a 32 channel mixing board that you can use 32 channels in mixdown, but you can only use the EQ on one or the other. You can't use them on both at the same time. You can insert hardware on the short and the long separately, but you just don't have the shared EQ, and you don't have the share preamp. The preamp only could be on the long fader or on the short fader. You do have a set of monitor ins that doesn't have the SSL preamp, so you have 64 channels in mixdown. So you could have, in essence, 32 channels, 32 physical faders at mixdown on the 16 channel, the Origin 16, but you'd be using more plugins in the box, and if that's okay with you, then that's totally fine. And if you have limited space, it's a much smaller form factor. Would I have bought, I think I would have still bought the 32. For the $20,000 difference, I like having 32 long, 32 short. I like using 64 faders. I don't ever use 64 for an entire mix. However, I have used 48, and if I had the Origin 16, I wouldn't have been able to bring 48 channels out to the console. You'd have to do a lot more comping in the box. And again, that's not a big deal. But for $20,000 to get double the faders, double the preamps, and double the EQs, I would have still bought the 32. So if you have the timeline where you can wait and you can save up and you don't mind spending that extra 20 grand, you know, again, if that's still the price gap by the time you all see this video, I would say hold out for the 32. I think you'll find that you don't think you need that many faders, but when you have them, you tend to use them. So I think that's what I would say. Again, not that the Origin 16 is not a great value. I think 40,000, again, if it's half the console, I would expect it to be half the cost. So if it was 30,000 and it was a difference between 30 and 60, now maybe you have a little bit better argument, because it is half the price, and half the price is still half the price. I understand when I bought my Origin, if you don't know the story, I've talked about it on this channel a lot. The Origin wasn't my first choice. I actually was approved for financing and was about to pull the trigger on the AWS series, the 948, which was at that time about $110,000. Right before I signed off on that to have that delivered to me, this came out. And I took a look at this, and this was literally, I paid $50,000 for mine at the time. They've gone up. This is $50,000 versus $110,000. And the difference, there's a couple of different features there, but from a physical fader count, the 948 AWS only has 24 physical faders. Now those can be either mono or stereo, whereas the Origin is all mono. Okay, so if you have a stereo piano track coming out to the console, you're coming out on 2 faders, where on the AWS, you could bring that to 1 stereo fader. So there's some benefit there. And I believe the AWS had some recall assist software, and it also had automation. I believe it had automation. Yeah, I think it did. But my point was, I was ready to pull the trigger on that. And when this came out, it was literally half the money, less than half, more than, it was like 60% less. And I gave up some of those features, but it was much better value, bang for buck, in my opinion, for what I do. And so if the Origin 16 was half the cost of the Origin 32, and you don't mind doing some extra comping in the box, and you don't mind only having 16 and 1632 long short faders, and you don't mind sharing the EQ and the preamp, then I would say for 30,000, I'd be a little bit more. But when you go up an extra 10,000, I'm thinking the 32. I know I'm bouncing back and forth, Stephen, and I hope that answers your question, but that's how I feel. I think I would have still bought the 32 because 20,000 wasn't enough of a price gap. 30,000 would have made me look at it a little bit, 30,000, 35,000 less than I would have considered the 16, but it wasn't out when I bought this. And I love the 32, I don't regret it at all. And no, I don't regret buying this over the AWS. The AWS is an amazing SSL console, but for like I said, for $60,000 more, it was too far of a bridge for a good old Uncle Dave to cross. So hope that answers your question. Okay, last question comes in from Dale R. And I've been asked this a couple of times as well, only a couple of times, but when Dale asked, I said, this is the second or third time I've been asked, so let me address it. Dale says, hey Dave, what are your thoughts about using your Origin simply as a summing mixer and doing most of the stuff in the box? It's an interesting question. So again, if you don't know, the Origin has on every single channel here, it has a button here called a 0 dB button. And basically what that does, it takes the fader completely out of the chain, out of the circuit. So what that means is you can run all your stuff out of your DAW through your EQs, through your hardware, keep all your faders pulled all the way down, 0 dB, puts it at unity, and you can use your faders in your DAW to mix. So you don't have to worry about recall and fader position and all of that, because this doesn't have flying faders. It only flies if I put my hands on it. I don't use the Origin that way. You can use the Origin that way. You can use it just as a summing mixer where you don't even need to use the EQ. You can just use the preamp and the master bus section and get all the goodness of all the electronics of the SSL, and you could print everything back in, and you could do most of the stuff in the box. And you can use this as a recording. If you're recording and mixing, you can use this for your recording piece of it, and then you can do most of your stuff in the box. That's all possible, and that's great. It's all a matter of workflow. For me personally, I could not see, I understand the 0 dB thing and I dig it, but I don't ever use it, because to me, one of the biggest reasons why I bought a console is I want to be moving faders, man. To me, if you're not going to do that, why have this thing? Just so you can run it through and get the SSL sound? That's cool, but there's a lot of cheaper ways to do it, man. You could just use a Surface controller, use your mouse and keyboard for your mixing, and you could go out and get, some hardware for your master bus, or you could get a summing box. There's a lot of stuff out there on the market that will give you, running your stuff out through like a 32 channel summing mixer and then back in is way cheaper than buying a console. So to me, the reason why you buy a console is to use the faders, to do 0 dB and to do it all in the box, to me would take 50% of the reason why I bought this thing right out of the equation. So I wouldn't buy a console to use it as a summing box. If you're talking about mixing, again, you not only get the faders, but obviously you get the preamps and the EQs. But yeah, so if you were just going to use the Origin as a summing mixer, I would say don't spend the money. If you're not going to use it for most of what it's capable of doing, don't buy it. There are cheaper alternatives that can give you the same kind of thing. And again, the whole point of me buying a console was to get away from the mouse and the keyboard and doing everything one track at a time and fingering one track at a time. I want to move stuff. I want my hands on stuff. I want to be moving back and forth across the console, and I want to be part of the performance of the music. And that's what this allows you to do. So I hope that answers your question, Jacob. And that's it for this week's episode of Q&A. So thanks so much again for sending in your questions. Again, leave comments below and send in more questions, and I'll be glad to put them in an upcoming episode. Make sure, once again, you like, share, subscribe, and check out all the affiliate links I have below if you're ready to go out and buy yourself some gear for your studio. And then last but certainly not least, make sure you check out mixingmusicanalog.com. Check out what I have going on over there, and keep your eyes peeled in 2023. We're in 2023 now, but depending on when you're watching this video, for our hybrid mixing courses that are going to be coming very soon. We're going to full training courses with audio files and mixing contests and all that stuff all around the hybrid and analog workflow. Keep your eyes peeled for that at mixingmusicanalog.com. So until the next video, I've been Dave with Mixing Music Analog and mixingmusicanalog.com. Thanks so much for watching me today, everybody, and I'll talk to you guys soon.